I'd like to invite Mark Keese to come and give us a few words. I will let Mark introduce himself, but he's a golf partner among other things. He's a member of our Skins and Pins Golf Club, and he's also a very active supporter of the Skin in the Game Foundation, among his other attributes. But I will yield to him and let him speak to you just for a few seconds.
Thank you, sir. Good night, everyone. That's weak. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Still weak. One more time. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Much better. Hey, listen, I want to say thanks to Mr. Greg Jones, the Amiga Foundation, for this beautiful event. And thanks to all who are involved, especially the folks from the Interval House. We appreciate what you do. It's a worthy cause. My name is Mark Keese. I'm here tonight. I'm accompanied here tonight by my wife, my beautiful wife, Colette. I gotta remember that because she said you better throw beautiful in there, so I did. So, my beautiful wife, Colette, my nephew, Courtney, my niece, Ramaya, my sister, Nadra, and his husband, Lance, my dear friend Winston and his wife Ruth. And you'll understand why I'm introducing these people, but when we went through our tragedy a year ago, these were the people that stood with us, and they've stayed with us through all of this, and they're still here with me tonight. So I just wanted to recognize them and say thank you for being there for us. I am no expert on the subject of domestic abuse. The only thing I know about domestic abuse is maybe once or twice a week I hear my wife yelling at me because I forgot to take my shirt up, or take my stuff off the bed, or when I take a bath I might leave, you know what, I might leave it on the floor somewhere. She yells at me. So, but that's as far as I know about domestic abuse. Why am I here talking to you then? Well, July 20th, 2012, I took my 15-year-old and my nephew to dinner. And we went to a Mexican restaurant out in Manchester. We had a great time. I had 2 Dos Equis, I had a bunch of, what was it, Courtney, enchiladas or whatever they call those things, but they were good. And I came home, I was full, went to bed. My nephew had a great time, my 15-year-old had a great time, went to bed, life was good. That was Friday, July 20th. Just before I woke up, around 6 a.m., the doorbell rang. I walked downstairs to see, I'm like, who the hell is ringing the doorbell at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning? So I went downstairs, there were 2 police officers outside my door. Immediately I thought about my wife, because my wife works nights, and she was at work that night. So I walked outside, and the officer said to me, "Is Colette home?" So immediately I knew my wife had to be fine, because he's asking about her. So I felt a little bit better. So I said, "No, she's at work." He said, "Who are you?" I told him who I was. He said, "Do you know Anastasia Keys?" I looked at him, I said, "What the hell did she do now?" He said, "Can I come inside?" I said, "Sure." Well, what he came inside to tell me was that my daughter was shot and killed by her boyfriend during a domestic dispute. That day changed my life forever. I think about my daughter every single day. Some days I cry. Some days I laugh. Some days I just sit there and think. Some days I go over to the cemetery, and she used to love music. And I would just go in there, put some records on, and I would just turn it up and just imagine her dancing. and laughing. Some days I go over there with all the bills that she left me, and I said, you better bring me the lottery number because I'm sick and tired of paying for these things. And some days I'm just mad at her and screaming at her because I'm like, why are you here? There was absolutely no reason for you to be where you are. And some days I feel like I'm more mad at her. Do you guys mind if I just be honest with you? Some days I feel like I'm just more mad at her than I'm mad at the guy who killed her. Because there was no reason for her to be in the place that she was. But then I look back and I listen to the people from the interval house, and I said, you know what? But there was no reason for him to kill her. My daughter was what? You call it 5'2", 115 pounds. She was a shrimp. And I sit and I think, as a man who says I'm in love with somebody, what could she do, a 5'2", 115 pound woman, what kind of threat could she be to me that I'm gonna pick up a gun and shoot her? I don't understand it, never will. My daughter died on a Saturday morning. Tuesday before she died, I had lunch with her. We spent probably 45 minutes to an hour. And during that time frame, she spent probably 90% of the time crying. And I couldn't get her to stop crying. And I kept asking her, what's wrong with you? She wouldn't tell me. But she kept crying, you know, and every once in a while I would try to throw a joke in there to kind of lighten up the mood or whatever, and she would smile, but then she just gets back to crying. So I got serious and I said, what's wrong with you? And she said, it's Steve. That was the name of her boyfriend. And I'm like, what about Steve? She said, I love him. She said, I love him, but I'm not in love with him anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, I don't know. I love him, you know, I care about him, but I'm just not in love with him anymore. Whew. But she wouldn't stop crying. So, you know, we talked a little bit, we ate, we talked, but the crying continued. So I started to get a kind of eerie feeling, and I said, Anna, has this guy ever hit you before? She said, no. But she had her head down and she was still crying. So I kind of took my finger, lifted up her chin, and I looked her in the eye and I said, has this guy ever hit you? And she said, no. You know that if he did, I would have told you. I believed her that day. I don't believe her now. I knew he was beating her. Because after she died, all her friends decided to confess to me that my daughter was battered both physically and mentally. The night before she died, that was a Friday night, after we came back working from the Mexican restaurant, she sent me a text. And I never got the text until after she had died. And it was 4 words in big bold letters. And all it said was, I want to come home. I still have that text on my phone today. I see those 4 words every day of my life. I'm driving to work, I look up in the clouds, I see it, I want to come home. I go to my bed, I close my eyes and I see it, I want to come home. I went to the cemetery yesterday to visit her, and I talked a little bit to her about this event. And I just looked at the grave and I said, baby, just come home. I'm tired of you saying I want to come home. Just come home. I wish she had come home that night. But to be honest, between you and I, even if I had gotten the text and I had went there to pick her up, she wouldn't have come home. She wouldn't have. She had multiple opportunities to either come home or go someplace else, and she didn't. So I'm talking to all these young ladies that I see in the group tonight. You know what you're going through. Maybe nobody else does except you. If you need to go home, go home. Because if you don't go home now, Mama and Papa might be coming to see you at the cemetery, telling you to come home, and guess what? It's going to be too late. So if you need to go home, I'm begging you, please go home. Anna died a victim of domestic abuse. And the part that hurts is that she never told us. The part that hurts is I had a wonderful relationship with her. Yeah, I got mad at her sometimes because my daughter was no angel. But you know what? She was my daughter. And I told her what I needed to tell her when I needed to do it. And she knew that. But she knew if she really wanted to come home, she could have. She knew if she told us what was going on, she could have come home. Yeah, I tell my kids, when you're living in my house, success is not an option. As long as you're living in my house, then you need to succeed. Some people say that's too much pressure. I say, to hell with you. You're living in my house, you're going to succeed. But that doesn't mean you can't come home and do what you need to do. You know, so I'm still kind of mad at her for being in the situation that she is. And if I'm rambling, you know, please excuse me, but I'm just trying to let you know why I'm here. Like I said before, I'm no expert on domestic abuse, but yes, I'm an expert on the pain that's left behind. Again, she died a victim of domestic abuse. She died because some kid, 23-year-old kid, decided that my daughter belonged to her. My daughter died because some kid decided that he was going to be the one to end the relationship. My daughter died because she took the easy way out. She gave up control to this guy because she didn't want to do the hard thing of going to school and getting an education. And when we talked to her about you needed to do what you need to do, she went out and lived with some guy, took the easy way out, gave control to him, and as a result, he thought he was in control of her life, and he took her life when she decided to end the relationship. She gave up control, and I'm begging you guys, all you young people in here tonight, don't give control of your life to anyone. Stay in control of your own life. On August 4th, we buried my daughter. The night before we buried her, I spoke to Greg. Or a couple of days before we buried her, I spoke to Greg. I said, Greg, Mr. Jones, who was just up here, I said, Greg, listen. I want to do, my daughter's wake, I want to do things a little bit different. My daughter has a lot of friends. You know, we have a young family, even though I don't look as young as I used to anymore. I'm still a relatively young man. So we have a young family. She had a lot of young friends. And I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to give them option. You know, I want them to know that there is a better way. So I told Greg I was going to reach out to some people in the community who were successful at what they do. People at the interval house, police officers, whatever. So they can just come and talk to these kids and let them know that, you know, if you're going through the things that my daughter was going through, you have options. You don't have to go through that by yourself. So we kind of talked about it. I asked Greg to be the master of ceremony that night, if you can call that a ceremony. And Greg came, did an excellent job. And what Greg did was, he said probably 10 or 15 times within an hour span, was that we will not let Anna die in vain. And he kept saying that over and over again. Those words, again, are imprinted in my heart and my mind. And we will not let my daughter die in vain. That's why I'm talking to you tonight. Not because I'm an expert, but because of a promise that was made. Greg and I talked a few months ago, and we talked about that promise and how we were going to keep that alive. And as usual, Mr. Jones had another idea. This one is called the Anna Keys Project. And the purpose of that project is myself, Greg, we're going to talk to the people at the Interval House, and what we want to do is go into the high schools, colleges, church, any building that will let us in. We're going to talk to folks. We're going to recruit folks to come and help us talk. We're going to talk to people about my situation, what I went through. We're going to let the expert talk about the statistics. We'll talk about our personal journey. But we're just going to encourage people who are going through the situation or know of people who are going through a similar situation to just know that they have options. So that's going to be one of the bases of the Anna Keys project. The next part of the Anna Keys project is going to be to raise money to give to organizations like the Interval House so that they can do what they do to bring some good. And what I'm hoping is that if I or this project can save one person, one young lady, can save one young lady's life, or save one family from going through the pain that my wife, my family went through, then I tell you what, all the money and all the effort will be worth it. And I'm going to share with these young ladies one thing that I share with my 15-year-old almost every week, and that I shared with my daughter up until the last lunch that I had with her, the Tuesday before she died. I always tell her, if you speak like a princess, the world will talk back to you like a princess. If you act like a queen, the world will treat you like a queen. But if you talk and you act like a fool, you will live and you will die just like one. Thanks to all of you for your support here tonight. Thank you to the folks of the Interval House for all the wonderful work that you do. And most of all, thank you, Mr. Greg Jones, for helping me keep that promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I asked Mark and Colette a couple months ago, whenever they were ready, that I'd be ready, that we would, just as I said at Anna's wake, we would not let Anna die in vain, and a part of that would be to get out and continue our message about domestic abuse. So it's been, I know Colette was a little hesitant, it's been less than a year, but I appreciate your courage in allowing us, because as Mark says, this is a part of the healing. And part of the healing is getting out and telling that story, and I'm glad that I'm able to assist you with it. As I said back in August, and this is a realization of that speech, we will not let Anna die in vain, and all the others that die from domestic abuse. That if we reach 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, that we've done something. So Mark, I appreciate your courage. Colette, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I asked them whether they were prepared to allow us to talk about it, but also have a party with a purpose. And they said, indeed, we would. Mark was concerned about putting so much of a blanket on the event that we wouldn't. And I said, when you tell your story, we'll do the rest. So I appreciate you telling the story. Thank you very much. Colette, Mark, and we'll